Sharjah, the cultural capital of the Arab world. One of the most business-friendly destinations in the region. Devoted to develop the Emirates economy. Committed to being the voice of the industry. And upholding the tenets of excellence and sustainability is the Sharjah Chamber of Commerce and Industry, SCCI. Throughout its 50 years journey, Sharjah Chamber has dedicated a wide spectrum of services to serve the growing numbers of members each year. Sharjah Chamber proudly supports businesses by offering under its wings Sharjah Expo Center, Sharjah Excellence Award, Sharjah International Commercial Arbitration Center, Takim, Sharjah Exports Development Center, 70 Fitness Spa and Lounge, Small and Medium Enterprises Center, Tijara 101.
A wonderful good morning, everybody. With these wonderful pictures from Sharjah and from Vienna, we would like to welcome you to our expert talk today. We call it Adjusting to a New Normal, and we will talk about healthcare, education, ICT, and the ICT sector in Austria and in the UAE. I would like to start and give the word to the president, our president, Senator Dr. Richard Jens. This gentleman, ladies and gentlemen, sitting next to me was the architecture of the bilateral partnership between EPIC in UAE and OMV, who is the largest Middle European oil company. And it is a wonderful partnership. So, and a lot of mayor, but I don't want to elaborate a lot about that. I will give him and pass him the mic to welcome all of you. Please, Dr. Schmitz.
Thank you very much, Muda. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed participants, I am pleased to welcome you to our webinar today on adjusting a new normal in healthcare and education and ICT sectors in Austria and in the UAE. A special welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to His Excellency Mr. Abdullah Sultan Al Owais, Chairman of the Sharjah Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and His Excellency Mr. Ibrahim Al Musharak, Ambassador of the United Arab Emirates to Austria. By the way, I would like to visit you once when we agree about the meeting date. Thank you.
By all means, you can even do it after the meeting, if you want.
And all of our distinguished speakers, I would also like to welcome AACC Secretary General Engineer Muda Kusha, who will moderate today's webinar. Like most countries across the globe, Austria was hard hit by the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic. And yet, thanks to the government's strict measures, rapid and long lockdown and national vaccination strategy, and despite the recent alarming Delta variant of the virus, the country has been able to slow down the infection rate and the number of cases, which have dropped significantly to reach a total of 1,959 active cases as of yesterday, June 30th, with 59 new cases recorded. Austria has also recently started reopening shops, restaurants, museums, and easing travel restrictions for tourists arriving from EU countries mainly, and life seems to be returned gradually, albeit many precautions remain in place. The government's precautionary measures implemented since the start of the pandemic came hand in hand with a set of economic assistance measures and aid packages that were rapidly designed and implemented to support the private sector, such as injection liquidity into companies, institutions, and individuals, applying tax deferral schemes, and preserving the labor market by applying the short-term work scheme, among other measures. Excellence, sorry. As the webinar's title suggests, today's discussion will mainly revolve around the healthcare and education sector in the UAE and Austria, with a special focus on lessons learned through the pandemic and the most recent scientific advancements, technological innovations allowing for a smoother adjustment, better businesses, and a brighter future. We are quite happy with the development, and the economy is doing quite well since we opened the shops, the museums, theaters, and so on. So it looks not bad right now. We are a little bit cautious with regard to autumn, but I hope that in the meantime, many Austrians are vaccinated, and so that we have a smooth autumn, hopefully. Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening.
Thank you very much, President Schenz, for your welcome speech. Ladies and gentlemen, this event wouldn't be possible without the cooperation between the esteemed Sharjah Chamber of Commerce and the AACC. We are delighted to have an honorable person who is the chairman of Sharjah Chamber of Commerce and Industry. By the way, at the same time, we are very proud to have him on our board, the board of directors of the Austro-Arab Chamber of Commerce. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome with me a gentleman who pushed the Sharjah Chamber of Commerce to a new level of cooperation, international and local cooperation, enhancing the relationship between Sharjah, UAE, and the Arab and the entire international countries. Welcome with me His Excellency Mr. Abdullah Sultan Al-Awais. The floor is yours, Excellency.
Thank you, Matar. Good morning, everyone. Your Excellency Ibrahim Al-Musharraf, UAE Ambassador to Austria, Senator Dr. Richard Schenz, President of Austro-Arab Chamber of Commerce, our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure and honor to welcome you and thank you for your joining us today webinar, SHARAKAH Expert Talk. We are proud to launch the first edition of the forum in cooperation with our partner, the Austro-Arab Chamber. 2020 was a normal year for all of us. The year where the health sector was in very high efficiency and fully occupied. Other side, the business, the tourism, the logistic services, the airline was also in a normal situation. The procedure which is taken by the government at the international level and domestic level was amazing. And two things: one, how to keep the people in the world healthy, beside to keep the education system, the healthcare, the business, the logistic services running well. It was a challenge year for all of us in the private sector and in the public sector. I'd like to welcome the Director of International Relations in Sharjah Chamber of Commerce to highlight some action was taken by Sharjah Chamber in 2020, where it's covered the education and the business and the healthcare, and to keep the people in the chamber in safe condition. Welcome, partner. Can you please elaborate on this?
Thank you, Your Excellency. To be accurately correct, I have to say good morning and good afternoon and evening to our dear guests who are joining us around the world, and we are lucky to have 100 registered for this webinar. My name is Fatma. I'm the Director of the International Relations at Sharjah Chamber of Commerce. I will take a few minutes of the webinar time to shed the light about the Sharjah Chamber initiative that will focus to support the healthcare and education in Sharjah. Sharjah Chamber was established in 1970, and by 2020 we celebrated the Golden Jubilee by continuing the 50 years, and we are looking for more years and working to support the business economy here in the Emirate of Sharjah. The reason why the chamber was established is to help to diversify the economy of the Emirate. But over the year, the chamber role evolved to become a key player in the business development. We are one of the 7 chambers in the United Arab Emirates, and we are unique by our initiative. We have over 61,000 members currently registered as Sharjah Chamber of Commerce. As you can see, we are the only chamber with branches across the UAE. We have 4 different branches located in Diba Al Hassan, and Khorfakan, Zaid, and Chalba. As you can see, Sharjah expand to reach 2 coastlines, the Arabian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, and we cater to both regions. To focus on the initiative, the Sharjah government has declared 47 initiatives to support the government, private entities, and business and individual. Sharjah Chamber take part in 4 main initiatives. The first one, the chamber team conducted a very intensive researches to allocate the sector that are facing problem. And with this recommendation, we raised it to the business and decision maker to help and aid the business plan to recover for those sectors, especially as the chairman said, the most affected one was the hospitality and retail sector. The second one, the Sharjah Chamber gave a 30% discount waived for the office rented by the startup and SMEs located in the chamber premises and properties. The third one, and the most important initiative that was launched by the Sharjah Chamber, was dedicated to the retail sector. They faced 45 days of total closure. So Sharjah Chamber launched one of the exceptional festival that is catering to take the initiative and restore the sector by giving some type of discount, and also it raised awareness about the safety measurement. And we, with the help of the Ministry of Health, we conducted more than 4,000 COVID tests to make sure also the workers on those retailers are safe and taking the right precaution. And we offer a 50% discount to the malls that participate on those festivals. And thank God that this festival raised more than 6 million revenue and restored and revived the sector of the retail. Finally, talking from my personal experience, Sharjah Chamber was very resilient to implement the work remotely during the pandemic. The support team allocated all the resources to make it easy for the employees to continue working through the safety of their home. And just to be more correct, it was 600 million, the revenues of the festival that was supposed to revive the situation of the COVID. Talking now about the main 2 sectors. Focusing on today's webinar, as the chairman said, the healthcare was the most important sector that was focusing during this pandemic. Sharjah Chamber mobilized all the resources available to support the Ministry of Health and Prevention in UAE. And given that Sharjah Expo Center, the exhibition location here in the Sharjah, that working under the umbrella of the Sharjah Chamber, utilized the exhibition space to make it into 3 stages, as you can see. The first stage was used as a COVID test center, and they administered free COVID tests for 3 weeks to encourage people to test for the symptom. The second stage, we converted the Expo Center to a field hospital set up by the Ministry of Health and Prevention for COVID patients. There was laboratory to make even the results coming faster. And Sharjah Chamber also, under their corporate social responsibility, donated even the meal for the doctors by around 150 dirham to support them during doing their heroic job. And the last stage and the current stage is the Sharjah Expo Center are working as a vaccination center with over the 15 booths as ready to inject the vaccine to all the people who are going to have the vaccination. And there are more than 1,500 seating for the waiting area. Lastly, I will talk about the education. As part of Sharjah Chamber role in the social responsibility, there was an initiative that we participated with the Sharjah Private Education Authority that is called the Right to Learn Remotely. We proudly provided 120 laptops that goes to the student and in their different scale of their student, and also it was also donated for the Center of Difficulties. And also within the Sharjah Chamber, we cater also for our members, our staff, because education has to go on, and also we want our staff to be focused on the best practices going through the world. We have a center is allocated for the development and training, and they successfully allocated 2,642 training hours that was provided to our staff, to our members, and even university students. They use different type of courses that was facilitated to them. And I'm proud to say that few of those students also participate in organizing this event. By this, I end my presentation, and I hope that I was fast enough, because I'm really looking forward for the fruitful discussion and for a speaker to take the stage and share their knowledge about the education and healthcare in both Austria and UAE. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Al-Awais, and many thanks to you, Fatma, for this wonderful elaboration. Allow me to say, ladies and gentlemen, that Daman reported 2020. Daman is the Arab Investment and Export Credit Guarantee Corporation, the following, that the foreign direct investment in the Arab countries is increased 2020 related to 2019 by 2.5%, and the Emirates take the lead when it's came to the foreign direct investment by 19.9%. So it's a billion, I'm sorry, 19.9 billion US dollar, and this is the top around the Arabic countries. Allow me then to introduce His Excellency Mr. Ibrahim Musharraf, Ambassador of the United Arab Emirates to Austria and the voice of Emirates that we have it in Vienna. We are very honored and glad and privileged by your presence, Your Excellency. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you for that introduction, Mother. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this opportunity to participate in this experts webinar. It is my pleasure to be part of this initiative of cooperation between the Austrian Arab Chamber of Commerce in Vienna and the Sharjah Chamber of Commerce and Industry, stressing the distinguished relations between Austria and the UAE. The Embassy of the UAE in Vienna is always keen to work on enhancing the bilateral relations between the UAE and Austria, especially in the education and health sector, particularly during this global pandemic of COVID-19. The UAE is looking forward to the establishment of comprehensive strategic partnership with Austria, which will allow us to work on possible joint projects with the Austrian side in the fields of education, health, and others, technology, green technology, and the environment. Education and COVID-19 in particular, in the UAE, the education is constitutional right for every citizen in the UAE, ensuring that all girls and boys complete free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education. The Constitution makes education free of charge at all stages for citizens throughout the UAE. From March 2020, the UAE has implemented distant learning to nearly 1.2 million students, either public or private schools, and higher education institutions as a precaution to protect students from COVID-19. To ensure successful distant learning process, it conducted professional training for school teachers and allowed private schools to use their own distant learning systems. It also launched smart learning platforms and guidelines, instructions, manuals to manage students' behavior on distant learning. The UAE offered free satellite broadband services for students in areas lacking connectivity and free home internet connections for families who have no home internet connections. The UAE also secured more than 600 computers for orphans and to activate their remote learning. The UAE has invested in smart learning during the past 10 years, and COVID proved that the UAE has a well-equipped infrastructure for continuous educational system. With regards to the initiatives in healthcare during COVID-19, the UAE fight against COVID-19, the government established a number of field hospitals. Dubai Field Hospital opened in April 2020 and located at Dubai World Trade Center. By the end of April 2020, additional 4 field hospitals were launched, located at Sharjah, Al Qawain, Ras Al Khaimah, and Fujairah, raising the capacity to more than 5,000 beds. The UAE also launched the UAE Volunteers Platform to consolidate volunteering efforts nationwide to fight COVID-19 pandemic. The platform is a result of collaboration with the governmental and semi-governmental entities, as well as the private sector and public benefits associations, to promote volunteerism across the UAE and utilize the talent of community members through field-based and virtual volunteerism. Federal and local government entities in the UAE have launched more than 100 stimulus programs since the first case of novel COVID-19 in the UAE. Vaccines against COVID-19 are available throughout the UAE, free of charge for medically eligible citizens and residents. In May 2021, the Ministry of Health and Prevention approved the emergency local use of Pfizer vaccine for children between the ages of 12 to 15, following clinical trial and strict assessment. The UAE also became the first country in the Arab world to begin manufacturing a COVID-19 vaccine with a full production schedule underway. Hayatvax, a joint collaboration between Sinopharm, CNBG, and Abu Dhabi G42. This initiative in the UAE is a strategic advancement to the future proof of the population health of our nation. Our joint venture is also actively looking to bring our capabilities to new markets around the world. General ability to adapt to many challenges of COVID-19 pandemic shows that we can change systems and behaviors when there is a sense of urgency and desire to do better. And in my opinion, the positive changes need international cooperation and coordination in all sectors. Being in Austria, I think Austria is one of the greatest partners that we can rely on to enhance these capabilities and a better future in both education and health. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for this wonderful presentation about the measures undertaken in the UAE and the wise word behind them. And of course, we are very delighted to have the Emirates, one of the top countries worldwide, not only in the healthcare sector and vaccine development, but also, as we have learned some weeks before, also arriving Mars with the Earth Mars mission. Ladies and gentlemen, let's come to our first session and to the topic, better health for better business. And we have a distinguished speaker today with us. I would like, and those three speakers are Professor Dr. Youssef Benninger and Dr. Abdelaziz bin Butti Al-Maheri, and also Professor Dr. Christoph Benisch. I will introduce them by the order and allow me to present Professor Dr. Joseph Benninger. This gentleman is hated by, the virus doesn't like him because he's working since years, decades in the research of virus, but he told me that he loves virus because he's working with them day by day. This gentleman, ladies and gentlemen, is a world leading virologist and geneticist and molecular immunologists. Just for your information, Professor Benninger was the professor who invented 2004 the medicine against SARS-1. And SARS-1 was a very short-living virus, thanks, but he was the person who invented this medicine against it. And he has also a medicine under testing now against COVID-19, a medicine, not a vaccine, for your information. Professor Benninger has a lot to elaborate and to tell us about the current research on the virology, especially to the COVID-19, but in general, and the possibility of cooperation with the Arab countries and especially with the UAE. Professor Benninger, the floor is yours. I think you have some PowerPoint presentation you would like to show us and elaborate on that. You have 10 minutes, please. The floor is yours. Professor, we don't hear you. Could you please?
Now it works. Yeah. Dear Excellencies, dear colleagues, it's a great pleasure to be invited to this meeting and get to know you. And I thought it's probably best I tell you a little story how we actually ended up what we are doing. So really from our discoveries we did more than 20 years ago when I was a young researcher at the University of Toronto. Can you still see my presentation, or because I cannot?
No, we are seeing you, which is very good.
How is this? 1 second.
Now we are seeing your presentation.
Perfect. So, the Excellencies, dear colleagues, I want to tell you about our story about ACE2, how we discovered it, and give you some insights why this is important for COVID-19. So many, many years ago, actually, when I was a young researcher in Toronto, I was interested in the development of hearts of insects. This is actually a beating heart from a fly. And we looked for genes. So this is what I do. I'm a genetic engineer. We made some of the first mutant animals, working with stem cell engineering since many, many years now. first in Toronto, then in Vienna, and now I'm running actually, I'm the director of the largest life sciences institute in Canada, in Vancouver. So we were looking for genes which regulate heart development in insects. And one of the genes we actually identified was this ACE2, angiotensin converting enzyme number 2. And ACE2 sits on the surface of our cells as a very fundamental, one of the most critical functions in our biology, regulating how our heart works, how our blood pressure works. And a system we call the renin-angiotensin system, we turned out ACE2 protects many tissues from injury. And it's a very ancient system. So we can find it in humans, in animals, in insects, and also even back to bacteria. So this is where we came from. So I co-discovered ACE2 in '98, and we actually generated the first ACE2 mutant animals. So as I told you, I'm a genetic mouse engineer, and finding the fundamental functions of ACE2. And then this little virus appeared in the world, the SARS virus 2003. At the end of the day, around 8,000 people were infected. It took 10 months to control it. And turned out that ACE2 is actually the essential entry gate for the SARS coronavirus 2003. So without ACE2, the SARS virus cannot infect us. At the same time, we actually found out that ACE2 has this fundamental function to protect our lungs from injury. And this is why we believe this virus became such a killer virus, because it did not even only use ACE2 to infect us, and ACE2 is essential, but also ACE2 is protecting us. So that's why this became a really dangerous virus. So we had been working on this for many, many years. I even won prizes for our research on fundamental mechanisms how the SARS infection can trigger lung injury. But the relevance was questionable because, you know, SARS disappeared luckily very fast and was not very infectious. And then, of course, this new virus appeared, a brother of SARS, a sister of SARS, and it became very, very fast clear that this will trigger a pandemic we still private to. And of course, this has triggered an unprecedented epidemic in terms of economic impact, social impact, educational impact, you name it. And it became also very clear, very fast, that ACE2 is the essential critical entry gate, entry door for the SARS coronavirus 2, which causes the pandemic and the disease we call COVID-19, coronavirus disease 2019. So this is actually how it looks when we look for the structure. This is ACE2. So this is actually how it looks. So when you actually watch it, and this is the spike protein, you all know from the media. This is the spike which looks out from the SARS coronavirus 2, and this is exactly where it binds to. And spike binds to ACE2, and ACE2 basically helps the virus to enter our cells. And we have now essential data that, again, without ACE2, there is no SARS-CoV-2 infection. So ACE2 is the essential molecule the virus needs to infect us. And as I said, we co-discovered this many years and actually defined the first work on this. Just a fun movie, we can even watch little spike proteins dancing. So this is what we do, single spike protein imaging. And you can actually see how this looks. So this is a spike and this is receptors binding. So we can even watch the SARS virus if we want it with new technologies people have been developing. ACE2, and of course I have an S-centric worldview, explains a lot of the pathology and what we see. ACE2 sits in our nose, in our throat. This is where we get infected. If I cough at you, have the virus, this is where the virus will land. Many people might not even realize asymptomatic, but can pass on the virus to the next people. That's why this is a dangerous virus and we have very hard time to contain it. In some people, they might develop a common cold and this is it. But in some people, the virus And Professor Venish will tell you much more about this. He is really the expert on the and treats patients. So in some people, the virus can actually enter the lung. This is where ACE2 sits. It's very deep in our lungs. This is why COVID-19 causes this very deep, very unique pneumonias. And of course, if you imagine a pneumonia leads to inflammation, the tissue is damaged, then the virus is made. The virus can actually escape into our bloodstream. And this is where ACE2 is. We mapped it into the brain, into the heart, into the kidney, onto the blood vessels. And this is really what one sees. Initially, of course, COVID-19 is a lung infection, a respiratory infection. But unfortunately, in later stages, because of ACE2 being the receptor, the virus can spread to other tissues and infect other tissues. And this is what also makes it so much more dangerous than other viruses, because it can cause all the symptoms in other tissues. Of course, there are many other aspects. The immune system has changed, blood groups are coming in, and I'm sure Professor Venish will tell you much more about this. So what we're also doing, just give you some examples. So this is actually the virus, how it really looks in electron microscopy. So this is a virus we isolated from the first patient in Sweden. We actually engineer now human tissues. We can take stem cells, make a little kidney. So this is actually a little kidney. One dream, of course, is one day we can generate a little human heart, a little human intestine, a little human tissue, blood vessels for transplantations. And we're actually doing this right now in a new company I started in Austria. And indeed, ACE2 can block the infection. So if we take the virus, infect these human little kidneys from stem cells, we can block infection. ACE2 is really critical and for this infection. So we are developing now, and Peter Llewellyn Davis will give you a company presentation. So I have to declare my conflict of interest, being the founder of the company Apeiron Biologics. We are now developing a soluble form of ACE2 for the treatment of COVID-19. The reason why we do this is twofold. We actually believe it's one of the most rational therapies you can think about. First, it's the entry gate. Therefore, if you take a soluble form, you block the virus to finding the real entry gate, cannot find the real door anymore. So it should reduce the virus infection. And secondly, from its basic biology, it can protect multiple tissues from damage, the lung, the heart, the blood vessels, the kidneys. And as I said, Peter will explain to you what we are doing now, what the company is doing now. And we're actually looking now right now for investment to push this into the next stage of clinical development. And also a big thank you to Professor Venish, who was actually part of our clinical study in this excellent unit treating COVID-19, critical COVID-19 patients. And I will end with this slide. We all know there's now amazing progress in science. Because of science and what scientists have been doing the last 30, 40 years, we have had this very fast fundamental understanding. I showed you ACE2 is the receptor. We have been working on this for 20 years. That's why it was very fast to identify this. Vaccines have been developed, which are amazing. Antibodies have been developed, and basically all the vaccines we know now and all the antibodies which have been approved do exactly the same. They try to block that the spike of the virus can bind to ACE2, because if you block this, then there is no infection. Where does now fit, of course, a soluble form of ACE2? And it fits because of virus variants have emerged, as everybody would have predicted. The Delta variant, as has been just mentioned. And that's very dangerous. And there are also cases where actually people have been vaccinated and now actually get infected. And there will be new variants emerging in the future. So even with this amazing progress, with the politics and science working together, we will still need some years to really contain this virus. However, the virus will always need ACE2 to infect us. because without ACE2, there's no infection. There will be no disease which we call COVID-19. Therefore, I believe ACE2 blocking the virus, possibly protecting tissues, should be really part of our repertoire in the future. We have vaccines, we make new vaccines, better vaccines, readjust vaccines and antibody to new variants. But ACE2, if we have this in our repertoire, and now we need to test it and finish our testing, should always work against any variant which comes along our way. That's why we believe this is really, and I really strongly believe and passionately believe in this, why it's very important to continue our clinical trials with this, and of course, under the right circumstances and the right populations to do this. And we have actually data that this works really well against variants. So ACE2, for instance, data we are just trying to publish blocks the Delta variant very, very well, where, for instance, antibodies fail, our molecule still works. Also, over the many years, we, my group, of course, many other researchers in the world, so this is a communal effort. We're all building our knowledge on the knowledge of others, of course, have developed amazing technologies which should allow us to fight the next pandemics. There are thousands of viruses out there which we don't even know yet, which could jump into humans and have always jumped into humans. So what the COVID-19 pandemic is nothing new. There are even data that I think 10,000 years ago, there was already a coronavirus pandemic, and they will continue to do so. But we have now technologies which allow us to figure this out and possibly make new medicines before it even happens and have these repertoires. So really the vision is to combine science, politics, and what's critical, financing, to figure this out and get ourselves ready for potential new pandemics, because I strongly believe science has progressed so much from so many people. There's so much brain power into this that we can figure this out, develop new medicines, and this, of course, the grand vision. We don't have to close our planet anymore because of the new pandemics, because we can act against it. Of course, nobody can promise this, but that's, of course, one of the promises of modern science. And with this, thank you again for allowing me to present our work from the discovery of ACE2, now 23 years ago, to ACE2 literally becoming the heart of the pandemic, which we call COVID-19. And I hope I gave you some little impressions what we can do with this and how this works into this amazing landscape, how science and politics have come together to make vaccines and, of course, new medicines. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Benninger. Now I recognize why viruses hate you, because you're doing a very detailed and very scientific work, and also counterfighting those viruses for the humanity. And I wouldn't be surprised if the next years will come up with a Nobel Prize for Professor Benninger. We hope that you will get it. Our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, he is combining both sides, the authority of Sharjah, but also the university, hospital, and also the research on Sharjah. If I will go through through his CV, I won't stop today, because there are a lot of achievements and positions he was occupying. But I will let him and will leave him the floor to elaborate on the situation in Sharjah and the UAE. Please welcome with me His Excellency Dr. Abdulaziz Saeed bin Butti al-Mahiri. Dr. Abdulaziz, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mudar. Your Excellencies, our distinguished guests and colleagues, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Greetings from Sharjah Health Authority. It is my privilege to attend this special webinar on the new normal in education and healthcare organized by Sharjah Chamber of Commerce and Austro-Arab Chamber of Commerce. Ever since the World Health Organization officially declared the COVID-19 outbreak as a pandemic in March 2020, the virus has reshaped the global health care landscape. For the first time in history, a health crisis has shut down the entire global economy, making healthcare very important institution in dealing with the issue. We have already faced the setback like physical and mental exhaustion of the healthcare workforce, which has led to replanning of the healthcare infrastructure, which are still main concern in some of the countries. The long-term impact are going to be more serious in nature. I see them affecting the economy, followed by technology and sustainability. In containing the virus spread and the mortality rate, our country has set benchmark compared with other nations in the region. And in the United Arab Emirates, as early as last year, October, government has initiated the vaccine drive across the country. The United Arab Emirates mortality rate from the virus is 0.3%, which is much below the global average. This has achieved through the great leadership of the country, which has taken swift and timely actions against the virus spread. Today, approximately 73% of the total population has been vaccinated in the United Arab Emirates. At Sharjah Health Authority, we are keen to participate and support the effort by the Ministry of Health and Prevention in these drives. Continuous awareness program and educating the society about COVID protocols are the major initiative undertaken by Sharjah Healthcare Authority. The pandemic has demonstrated that no health system can stand alone, and every country has something to teach and something to learn from the way it's being managed. Therefore, creating a new alliance can help ensure continued development of creative partnership and a new business model, as well as the future of healthcare R&D. And here in Sharjah Health Authority, we have an investment arm, which is the Sharjah Healthcare City. It is a free zone city developed recently. And if you can allow me, I can share about video 3 minutes. Is it okay? I can share the...
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead,
yes,
sir.
please.
So we can't see your presentation. No.
Now?
Now we can see it. Yes.
Okay.
Please.
Okay. Can you hear the voice?
No.
Okay. The voice?
No, actually not.
Sorry, you can not hear the voice with the video?
No, we can't hear the voice.
Okay. I'll try maybe by sharing.
Excellency,
yes.
if you share the screen, there is a button down left while you are sharing. Just stop it and cancel it and try to share it again. Down and left, there is a button you have to press on it, and then we can hear that. Yeah, if you just go out of this presentation,
sorry.
sir.
Yes.
Stop the screen sharing and try it again. Then you will get the information if you share the voice with us or not. And then please tick it, and we will get the voice.
Okay. You are sharing. Stop the video. I'm sorry about that, but there is some technical problem.
Kann er das sehen? Ich weiß es nicht.
I think if we can.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, doctor, if you just quit the
Yes.
screen, yes,
The
and
screen
then
sharing, yes.
if you now start again the screen, you will see a button down and left. There is a button you have to click on it just to share the sound as well.
Yes, share computer sound. Okay.
Yes, yes, that's it.
Okay. Now.
We don't see the.
You can't see anything?
No, we can see your Excellency's nice face, but we don't see the film. Start screen sharing.
Sorry.
Sir. If you please push on
yes.
start. Now
it's okay. Sorry about that technical problem.
I'm sorry, we
yes.
don't see the film, just the voice.
Only the voice? Oh my God.
Yes.
Sharjah Healthcare City is designed to ensure a smooth and hassle-free single window business setup for you. We are dedicated to become a one-stop shop.
Sorry, I think
yes, Excellency.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Excellency.
I think if we can control it from the moderator, or is it?
We will try to be as calm.
No, nothing.
No, just voice without
the screen. Okay.
Dr.
Abdulaziz,
I think if we can.
We will play it later. We will contact your office to send it to us, and we will play it at the end of this the event. I think you muted yourself. Dr. Abdulaziz, you muted yourself.
Now it is showing that you can regain control anytime. So decline or approve. Now it's okay.
Okay, no. Share it now. The team will try to take control.
Okay, sorry about this technical presentation, but as you may know that adapting to the next normal once the pandemic is under control will likely require organization to rediscover their patients and customers' needs, many of which have been reshaped by the crisis. Despite the many shocking impact of the COVID-19 crisis, it does present the healthcare sector with a powerful opportunity to innovate at a quicker pace and in some ways reinvent itself. The pandemic has been a wake-up call, and the industry is going back to a normal that is stronger, smarter, and safer. Thank you all for listening, and I am willing to answer any questions regarding the Sharjah Healthcare City as a partnership with all the investors all over the world, and also about going back normal in healthcare especially and all sectors. We have our friends and alliance in all over the world, and we are looking to have friends from Austria to have and share their knowledge to establish a cooperation and a partnership with Sharjah and the United Arab Emirates. And we are welcoming all kind of investment can be done in Sharjah, and will facilitate all of this partnership. As His Excellency, our Ambassador, Mr. Ibrahim Al-Musharraf said that UAE has established a strategic cooperation with the Chinese manufacturing vaccine, Sinopharm, and it is already manufactured in UAE with the name of Hayavax. We are here in Sharjah looking in part of research development in Sharjah University. I think Sharjah University will have Professor Hussam is going to speak about the education, but also the other arm is healthcare. It is an important sector that we can work together and we can achieve success, not only for the United Arab Emirates and the community, but for all the humanity and for all the world. As you may know, healthcare has been shown to all the world that it is the basic kind of elements can depend on a crisis, and all the people are looking to the healthcare as the saver for their lives and for their security. We wish you all the best, and we are welcoming all kind of discussion, cooperation, and collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your elaboration. And we will try to spread the video that you were trying to show us to the audience, together with our colleagues in Sharjah Chamber of Commerce. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to come over to the representative today of the Vienna Healthcare Counselor Office. Actually, he was sent by His Excellency Councillor Hacker from Vienna, the local Minister of Healthcare, to represent the office. But Professor Wenisch, as he was already mentioned by his colleague, Professor Benninger, is the head of the Department of Infectious Diseases and Tropical Medicine. And he is also in the management committee. Dr. Wenisch is also in the managing committee of the Austrian Society of Infectious Diseases and Tropical Medicine. If you see his publication, more than 150 papers with this special interest on antimicrobial therapy and others. But let him speak just to know about the situation in Vienna. We know, all of us, that there were a very heavy work in Vienna to overcome this pandemic, and maybe he could give us an insight view. Professor Wenisch, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good business decisions need theoretical and clinical knowledge. When it comes to clinical knowledge, I can share information which have a basis on the personal treatment of more than 3,000 patients, 300 of them on the ICU. Our first 142 patients here on the green line have shown a very high mortality rate, in particular in those patients who are in the older age groups. And this is in comparison to influenza, 3 times higher approximately here. What we learned in the last 1.5 years is numerous treatments in immune modulation, antivirals, antibodies, anticoagulations, prone positioning on the ICU, high flow oxygen treatment, and extracorporeal membrane oxygenation treatment on the ICU can save lives. But we also have to reflect on co-infections. That means that not one virus is infecting the patient and leading to disease, but also other bacteria which are colonizing the patients use that chance and make a second or third infection. But what is also important is organization. The organization of a COVID unit needs to have an ICU, an intermediate care center, and also normal ward beds, but also has to be embedded in a hospital setting where help can come from other departments. And my department I'm heading since more than 17 years. We have 200 persons here working. And you need to know that from these 200 persons, 60, that means 30%, became infected during the pandemic so far. So they had to be substituted from other personnel, and this is very highly educated personnel. And we, as you all know, we are also see numbers outside, numbers of cases outside the ICU affects our outcome in the ICU, which I will show you later. And these are the things which you know from the media: vaccination rate, digital health, lockdown policies, and masking policies, nose sprays, etc., affect prognosis, affect outcome, and affect the effectiveness of measures which are done within the hospital. These are numerous things which 1 year ago have had
Sorry to interrupt you, Professor. The slides are not moving.
The virus, but what we have seen so far is that some of these things, and these are here, are totally useless. And others, like antibodies, are like a two-edged sword. On the one side, it could be very beneficial, clearing the infection when you give an antibody in the early course of the disease, but that when you give it late, then it could worsening the outcome and path the way to death in the patients much more easier.
Professor Hamish,
you have to know,
I'm sorry.
Excuse me?
We can't see the presentation. We see only the introductory screen of the presentation. So
okay, this is very bad. Yeah, I do it again. Excuse me. Oops.
Go ahead, sir.
So, is it?
Now it's fine.
Now it's fine.
Yes.
Okay. So this is my department, and some of my some of my fellows. And as you see on the ICU, we had a mortality rate which is just one ICU, which undulated between 40% and 10%. And we were wondering why this is so. And we found the reason that this is not abnormal. In some regions here in France, there is mortality rate of 40%, in other regions is 21%. And this should be to the infrastructure of the hospital, such as no oxygen flow lines, so that they have too less oxygen, and also staffing, weekend staffing or not weekend staffing at the ICU, and the patient volume, high volume, leads to a low outcome. To sum up this, we have the prognosis in COVID has an clinical history. As we started with the disease more than 1 year ago, we had low counts and cases, and also very low knowledge, clinical knowledge, versus very high counts of qualified personnel and functional hospital beds. This came to the point that we had very high counts cases, but the low knowledge was persisting because it was a novel disease, and nobody, numerous people said, you can give this or give that or give that, and this is very good and this is very good, but you also have to rely on your experience. And when you do the job at the hospital bed since more than 30 years, there comes things which later on look bad to the patient, and so it's very complicated. And this story is never ending. As Penninger also alluded to, we have various relations and different views and few levers. So there is a way to go for all of us in COVID-19 therapy. And when I heard the word containment, I think this will take some time. So to sum up, when we have a novel disease on the world, it starts with uncertainty and different opinions. Then it comes to different emotions and regulations. We've all seen at the media different kinds of regulations and different kinds of emotions. And from the clinical point of view, there are two solutions. One is intelligence hub, that means that we share our knowledge to the practically treating patients very fast and very smoothly, so that everybody has an easy access to evolving knowledge, what means to get the right treatment to the patients. And we have to engage us all of us in clinical studies, and when you only have money, then give the money to the people who make the clinical studies. And ACE2 is one things we are here within, which really deserves it, to get it to the patients as an option to stop the disease immediately, because it has these numerous effects. So come to the intelligence hub. What we have established in Vienna hospitals, and we have here, as you know, more than 30,000 personnel in these hospitals, treating nearly 80% of the total population in Vienna. And we have here shared our knowledge, made videos to treat on the normal ward, what is to done when you have an admission, or what is the therapy. And this is from the intensive care unit, just screenshots of our homepage where we shared the knowledge in the November, December last years. And you see here we have downloads where we have so standard operating procedures for all different aspects of the disease, and which can easily be accessed. And this is my last study for the studies in Vienna. We have made this homepage, and we are in different studies we have involved, as has been alluded to. And thank you so much for listening, and a little apologize that the slides had problems. Thank you.
No worries, Professor Wenisch. Many thanks for the interesting presentation. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to elaborate a little bit. Vienna has around 50 hospitals. In Vienna, because of the investment in the research and technology together with the healthcare industry, for example, Boehringer Ingelheim, in a cooperation with the city of Vienna, has launched a PCR test, which is innovated in Austria, in Vienna, which is the gurgle test. And therefore, the gurgle test is just you take a liquid in your mouth and gurgle with it and put it back and put it in any supermarket chain that are given. In the next day, you will get the information about the analysis, the COVID situation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Could you please switch off your microphone, sir, because you're talking publicly. So, and therefore we have the highest in Vienna and Austria, the highest testing density in the cities, in the European cities in general. So we are doing a lot also after having getting the vaccine. I have been vaccinated by mRNA vaccine twice, but I am doing the test as well just to be sure that I can't spread this virus. And as we heard, ACE2 is in a testing phase. By the way, this is the time, ladies and gentlemen, also to the business community to indicate to them there is a need for a massive cooperation and investment between the healthcare industry, research and scientists that we have heard today, and also the business and the economic side. And this will be a very fruitful and also beneficial, financially beneficial, but also mainly the humanity will benefit out of it. So since we are over the time, 15 minutes over the time, I will hand over to Sharjah Chamber of Commerce and to Mrs. May Sultan bin Hadda to lead the next session. We remain, and I will be back after the next session. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and to the speakers for the wonderful speeches. And we will try to show the film of Sharjah at the end of this panel, or we will spread it at the end to the people, to the audience. Thank you very much.
شريك حقيقي لمجتمع الأعمال، خدمات عصرية برؤية ثاقبة، البعد الواعد لعالم الأعمال، خدماتنا، مبادراتنا، شراكاتنا، غرفة تجارة وصناعة الشارقة تقود أعمالك إلى العالمية.
Dear all, thank you for joining this session. We have a collection of some of the greatest minds in the education field, and I'm very eager to hear what they have to say in regards of this very challenging year for education. Many have implemented blended and distance learning in a heartbeat, which is not the easiest of tasks. I would like to first welcome our first panelist for this session, Dr. Thomas Strater. I'm sorry I didn't pronounce the last name correctly, but he is an amazing educator in the field of training teachers in technology-enhanced learning and teaching. Dr. Thomas?
Hello. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure.
So, Dr. Thomas, I would like to ask some questions to get the conversation going. What are the most popular myths and misconceptions in the field of blended and distance learning? Also, during this time, what should educators know to have the full effect of distance learning?
So this is, of course, a very challenging but very good question, especially in times of education and digital technologies, of course. But one of the most important things that is very challenging for us, especially in the field of education and teacher training, is that I truly believe in the fact, and this is what several studies show, that we should not focus on a sole technological determinism. That means we should not only focus on app fireworks and bling bling technologies. I think it's rather a back to the roots approach. Even this might sound a bit contradictory, especially in highly digitized contexts, but the main idea is that, of course, we should try to methodologically exploit the internet, so to say, and put in very unscientific words. But what does that mean scientifically speaking? Because a lot of students at our universities, pre-service teachers, upcoming teachers, reported at the first level of distance learning that they suffered some kind of an information overload, a massive overload of too much information and workload. So that was quite strange to them. And another very, very crucial aspect they mentioned in this study was that professors were not reachable in the virtual and digital context. And I think this is one of the most challenging aspects we have to face when we design new learning technologies within an educational context. And that's not only related to teacher education. So we should probably interact and communicate more. And scientifically speaking, this is the aspect of sociality. That means we should try to come up with innovative formats where we can communicate, interact, and collaborate with our students. And this can be done with learning management systems, for example. This can be done with simple forum entries. This can be done with simple videos where the professor just asks the students how they actually are. So I think it's a very important blend of factual curricular knowledge, which we still have to convey, but also a matter of social interaction within digital context. And this is what we know from several studies that teachers especially suffer from, that they don't have the toolkit how to interact socially within digital platforms. Whereas I have to say that Austria is really trying to do well when it comes to implementing these steps, so to say. So what it needs is probably more focus on also like blended learning approach, not too much on technological determinism. And of course, we should focus on in-house training. We should try to really, one thing, I don't like the aspect or the word of emergency remote teaching. Probably you've heard this as well in your context, not only in education, but also in teaching, yeah? And I don't really like this word seen from a semantic point of view, because emergency in general is a semantically negatively connotated word. And this doesn't have to be the case, because there are various examples how you can actively, methodologically exploit the internet, like this conference here, with very interesting formats, with the use of multimodal artifacts like videos and interactions, for example. So let's get rid of the term emergency remote teaching, and let's get back to a solid approach of learning in the 21st century. It's not a Corona year, because a lot of teachers speak of, I'm happy that the Corona year will be over to get back to continuous lessons. But if your continuous lessons are also, let's say, boring and not versatile, that's not more or less the fault of digitization. And that's why I would like to emphasize the whole importance that digital media should not be a so-called pars pro toto scapegoat that everything goes wrong in this pandemic, so to say.
Well, that's amazing. Actually, when I was doing research for this discussion, I realized that, distance learning is not all bad. And from discussing with you and the other panelists, they're very keen on just calling it learning in the 21st century. And that's amazing. But also I was wondering about the studies on how do the students, and their reception towards the distance learning. And I think you can elaborate on that.
Of course I can. So one of the most crucial insights we gained from these studies, there were various studies in German-speaking countries carried out, especially in the first lockdown in Europe, which was in March 2020. And they came up with three interesting or relevant points. They just said, we are overwhelmed by the amount of information. That's what I had just said before. But the other thing was that a lot of students did not really have the chance to contact or get in touch with a professor. So that actually they experienced distance learning as a process where the professor came up with a task they had to do, for example, reading a lot of literature. Then you summarize or do an excerpt on these literature reviews, and then you upload this whole thing on a platform. And this is not the way constructivist learning within a digital environment is supposed to work, right? Because we all know the various learning theories. And the thing is, these studies additionally said that students would like to have more methodological versatility, which brings me back to the good old approach of instructional design, which is not a 21st century approach. Instructional design is an approach which also appeared in the analog media. So for me, the most important thing of this study is that it nicely shows You don't have to be an IT expert as a professor or university teacher or school teacher in order to come up with methodologically versatile learning arrangements. You need to be a good teacher with a solid, profound pedagogical knowledge in order also to come up with interesting Zoom sessions. You know what I mean? And this is the whole idea. And that's why for us at the Vienna University College of Teacher Education in Vienna, it's very important that we try to convey the whole idea that we need to come up with instructional design scenarios. The technology per se is nice to have, right? But technology should act as a catalyst, yeah, for innovative learning and teaching scenarios. That sounds a bit, of course, romantic, so to say, but the scientific background is that it's getting back to the roots, really sticking to instructional design scenarios, which actually appeared in various studies like 20 or 50 years ago.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I think we have so many questions, but I think let's hold it for the end of the session and see if we can answer those later on. And now let me introduce Professor Isam Ajami. He is the Dean of Quality Assurance, Institutional Effectiveness and Acceleration at the University of Sharjah, which is one of the strongest universities here in the UAE. Professor.
Thank you very much. Actually, we heard now about from the beginning of this of today meeting about the healthcare and its adaptation to these new crises, and also the psychology of people, the business impact on business, and the impact on the research. And these we have to cope with these changes. And the education has a central role on this. The education, it builds the capacity, it produces people to work in the industry, to work in the business, and also to work in the healthcare environment. So the education has to change and cope and produce people who can cope with this environment and with any emerging similar situations in the future. And as it has been said, that the education has two sides, the pedagogy, the content of the education, the teaching and the learning methods, in addition to using the technology and the other facilitators to facilitate delivery of the content and engaging people. So the education now is in a very critical situation where it has to absorb all these changes, understand them, and redesign the education process, the content, the substance that has to go to the students at different levels from KG to the university, and also embed in this pedagogy, in the teaching learning methods, every facilitation, every enhancement, and the top of this enhancement is that technology. So what the University of Sharjah has done to do these philosophical things, to educate good and to produce people who can work in the world, what challenges have been faced, and what we can learn to reform our education and to make it more productive. So the university has, as you said, it's a big university, the biggest in United Arab Emirates. It has healthcare, we call it healthcare complex, healthcare environment, as Dr. Abdulaziz said. It has medicine, dentistry, pharmacy, and allied health sciences. We are proud of producing people who can work together in this team, nurse, physiotherapist, medical laboratory technology, doctor, pharmacy together. And we faced a huge challenge in how to educate these people while we are in lockdown, how we provide doctors and nurses, physiotherapists, and medical laboratory science while they are in lockdown, because we cannot stop the world. We have to produce people. So that challenge has been faced by integrating the proper technology, and we minimize the time spent in the hospital or in the laboratory, and to compensate that time with expanding it with what is called e-portfolio. So the student can see few patients or little time, but then can elaborate on a lot of ideas related to the situation, analyze, critical thinking. So that this added value helped us to compensate for the minimizing the time of real exposure, expanded virtually, then people can learn and can cooperate at a distance and see each other using the Zoom as we are doing today, and see the patients while they are on lockdown, and then express what they learn on e-portfolio. And we were able to produce people who, when they were tested with the standardized tests, they did as good as if they are in the physical world, you know. So this was the healthcare, and we are cooperating with the different hospitals in the country to help it, of course, with this pandemic from our volunteer students, and we were able to continue producing doctors, dentists, and others without a stop because of the integration of the technology based on the pedagogy, based on the without compromising the content. Now come to what we learn. Is it bad? Is it this pandemic bad for 1.5 years of lockdown? The answer is yes and no. Bad because of the, you know, the mixing the people psychology, if you like, because of the people social environment. They cannot engage in social, you know, world. But what we learned from it? We learned from it, for example, the business. I can give Austria example, and I can give UNESCO example. For example, how we invest these challenges and come up with even better solutions. So, for example, yeah, a simple example. We have what is called the tourist guide program. This tourist guide program produces people who guide the tourists. How they learn? They learn in the classroom. How they train? They train in our museums. So we send them to the museum, learn. They go to the museum, spend 1 day or 1 week or 1 month to learn how to physically guide the tourists. So in the lockdown, what they do, then they have a virtual tour all over the world. They have seen the museums all over the world, and they criticize these museums. So this is the training. So the experience of our students was not triple, was, you know, folded, I can say hundreds of times, because they have seen the world, the whole world, not only Sharjah museums. Can you see the point? Yes, it has some limitations of the physical presence. So our students in their training, they visited UNESCO museums, the British Museum, museum in Austria, museum somewhere, compared with them, compared their facilities, their advantages, disadvantages. So that experience was very good. Another challenge that was in favor, not against, thesis or research supervision. Like we have heard today, 2 presentations about the COVID. We linked our students with supervisors from all over the world, not from our local supervisors. So the student was limited to 1 supervisor or 2 from our labs, or 1, for example, collaborator from our labs. And when people were under that pressure, they had to cooperate with each other, you know. So we invested, we used the technology to link our students with 2-3 countries, for example. We give them our experience, they give us their experience. There was limitation about this. People were conservative about, you know, mixing. Now that mixing is more rich, and the product, yes, we know the social limitations, we know the psychology, people are sometimes depressed of not being engaged fully. But after a few months of the shock, we recovered, and we came back with better education scenarios, better education environment, where we can, but I insist that the pedagogy means the aim, your objective, the education should precede first. Then you design everything, especially the technology, to help you to produce better and to improve your student experience. I take the business, for example, as another example. So our business students, suffered a lot. They don't go to the financial market, they don't go to the industry, they wanted to apply. So we came with the same thing. Who can cooperate with us and who we can cooperate with them? So we looked for students in other places of the world who have the same need. We wanted to mix, we wanted to exchange the experience. So, but it has to be well planned. So many of our students really enjoyed it because they expanded the experience of education. With this, because Mai has sent me one question about people satisfaction. Is it working really? Is these things working? Are people satisfied with this or not? So after the pandemic, we started as other people in the country and maybe in the world, we started to see how we cope. So it came to us in March, and in March also we started the education, continuing education. And after 3 months or 4 weeks of the beginning, we surveyed students and faculty. Do you like it? What problems, etc. We learned from these 4 weeks a lot of things. And while we are working also in the technology and providing, reforming some of the courses, some of the programs, and then we moved to another step, higher step of the performance. Our last surveys compared with the previous ones about the experience, about the enjoyable experience, and having more inputs in the education, it was more positive than before. I don't like to say that it is all rosy or beautiful, but we know the limitations. But I am saying that the challenges that we face give us a lot of lessons that even if COVID will go, we should continue the hybrid, we should continue the blended, we should enrich with our theories of education and the pedagogy. We should not stop the virtual collaboration with all parts of the world that will help in making our students more active, more global vision, more global understanding. And this is what we noticed, and we should really grasp these opportunities and build on them to produce global citizen rather than local one, because you can engage with more and expose your people to more experiments, more ideas from outside.
I agree, Professor, because actually during the pandemic, we were able to do a tour on the Louvre Museum in Paris on the computer, and it was very enlightening. Again, thank you so much, Professor. We will have a list of questions at the end of this session. And now I would like to invite Mr. Rob Heelig, who is one of the core individuals involved in digitalizing many projects in the government sector and the education sector in Vienna. Dr. Ruben?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. Excellencies and dear participants, thank you very much for having me. I'm very honored to be able to participate. And I would like to take a more digitization focus or point of view from a perspective of the public administration. So what did the pandemic do to us? Well, I like to call it an intensive crash course in regarding digitization. Of course, it was for the whole society, for the educational area, for the health area, as well an intensive crash course that really caught us on the wrong leg. But I've been dealing with digitization in the public administration for the last 10 or 12 years very intensively. And actually, we could also say we haven't learned anything new, but we have learned it now during the last 16 months in a very intensive way, in a way that we cannot turn our head away. So you may be familiar with the fact that public administrations tend to be very resilient. to put it in a positive connotation, which also could mean that we don't change very fast, which is good in our role as a reliable intermediary. But with digitization, sometimes we need to move a little faster than we are used to. And the pandemic showed us exactly that. We started on the 29th of February, of last year. And the first thing we needed to do, to give you an example, the first thing we needed to do was create a web app for the citizens that are infected, but don't show so hard reactions that they need to go to the hospital. So we created a web app to give the people the opportunity to stay at home and not go to the hospital, and be able to hand in their individual and their subjective health situation with 5 or 6 questions. And on the other hand, keep the hospital beds that we would need for heavier cases available. And we had exactly 2 weeks to do so. So in a normal digitization reality, what would have happened was 3 months of analysis and 3 months of writing requirements, and then 3 months of developing. So this is what I mean with crash course. So what we realized at that point was that we need to develop special skills in order to achieve our digitization goals for the next 10 or 15 years, which I like to call, and everybody knows about that, agile skills. What we need to develop is methodological skills in order to be able to decide which methods need to be performed for which kind of digitization work for our citizens. And there are many more things that we realized, and it's not surprisingly also been mentioned in the other areas. We need to learn that we can't digitize by ourselves. We need to intensify our collaboration and cooperation activities, as well with other communities, of course, with universities and research, which we are already doing, but we have to make it even more. And we need the market, but we have to develop skills to be able. That was also a lesson that we learned in the pandemic. About 3 times a week, I had an offer from the market promising me COVID heaven, and solving all the problems that we as a public administration have. So what we learned there is that we really need the skills to be able to identify whether this is something that helps us to get nearer to the solution of a problem, to create better services for our citizens, or is it something that doesn't help us? And does it fit in our architectural blueprint, or doesn't it fit? Is it more work, or does it really help? We need a lot of more skills of that, so that we can really collaborate with the market and benefit as well to the public administration itself, but foremost for the people, for the citizens.
Of course, and I agree, Mr. Ruben, that you called it a crash course, and it was a crash course to many people. And, I think it put a lot of strains on so many, administrations, governments, education systems, even food systems, food security. So I was just wondering, what are some lessons that you have learned through the pandemic that you will try to implement or try to create a better basis for it going forward?
Well, we have lessons that are on the technical side, which are most of the time boring for everybody who's outside the technical side. But what we need to to really enhance is that our systems need to be able to talk to each other, to put it very untechnical. We like to call it renovate your core. We have technical silos, and then we need data that need to be exchanged, but there are no ways of exchanging automatically. And at this point, I would like to mention that I fully agree to Professor Strasser's mentioning that technology should only be like a catalyst. I like to call it digitization doesn't equal technology, doesn't equal technical. It's either an enabler or a disabler, but it's not digitization. Digitization is organization, society, people, and our social needs, and digital tools are just the means of either enabling benefits or not, if you implement it in the wrong way. And on the other side, we have those organizational lessons. Of course, we have in the educational part, we have this distance learning. We, of course, had home office. I was head of what we call our internal startup until yesterday. Since today, so you got me on the right day. Since today, I'm at the office of the CIO of the city of Vienna, and until yesterday, I was the head of, as I said, this internal startup called PACE. And for us, it wasn't anything new. We had like 2 or 3 days of home office for the last 5 years, but in general, it was quite new. Working from home, so we need some special digital skills and competences that we need to further develop. We had a big impact in terms of, as I mentioned before, in terms of skills, methodological skills, foremost agile skills. We had to adapt. It wasn't possible to say, I'm sorry, we do it the classical way and it will take 6 months, because society didn't have 6 months to wait for some digital tool. So this, to me, I was always convinced that we need those skills if we want to digitize successfully, but never ever before we had such a big pressure like we had in the pandemic. So I agree, there's not all is bad regarding the pandemic. And the biggest lesson, I think, is that we just need to collaborate. We have to understand that no organization, no public administration, no city, no matter how big it is, will be able to digitize on their own.
Of course. Thank you so much, Mr. Hayek. Very fruitful. We will hold the questions till the end of the session. I would like to introduce our last speaker, Mr. Stan Brackman, who is leading the strategic planning at Sharjah Private Education Authority. Mr. Stan, are you here?
I am here. I am here. Thank you. Thank you, Mai.
Thank you. Mr. Stan, can you just introduce yourself? And I think you have a couple of slides to share.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Stan Brackman, and I'm the Director of Strategy for the Sharjah Private Education Authority here in Sharjah. And we're just so lucky to be under such great leadership as His Highness Sheikh Dr. Sultan Al-Qasimi. I was very passionate about education, and you can see a lot of amazing things that have happened in the last couple of years due to the effort and initiatives that have been put forth. So yes, and I would like to share a couple of slides. I just want to give you briefly an overview in terms of Sharjah Private Education Authority oversees approximately about 116 schools. We have about 160 nurseries and about 50 or so continuing education institutes that we oversee, regulate, and we seek to improve. And really, when the pandemic hit, it's really easy to talk about all the challenges and all the difficulties that happened while the pandemic was going on, but we really wanted to approach it from a different perspective. And we started with this kind of key question is, how can we utilize COVID to really improve the education system? And that was really a key driver for us in terms of really how are we going to take this forward? How can we move education to the next level? And how can we continue to improve schools throughout the process? And so what we saw is there was a 3-phase process. We had this first initial phase, which was an immediate response once COVID hit, and all of a sudden students are at home and schools are not ready to do a full distance learning, or even in many cases even partial distance learning, or not even have, some of them don't even have the technical infrastructure to even begin that. How did we get them to launch distance learning within a very, very short period of time? And this is about 2 weeks in our case, in terms of how long we had to react. So we had this first immediate phase, which we had to address. And then we moved into an interim capacity building phase, where we really wanted to build within the schools their ability to deliver very effective, engaging distance learning sessions. Until now, the phase that we're getting in is really where we're at now, is the sustainability phase, where we want more of a hybrid model, where we have the flexibility in learning, that the teachers are far skilled at delivering these engaging experiences, and they can do both face-to-face, and they can do distance. They can move back and forth between the two quite seamlessly, so that we become more resilient, and we really leverage the benefits of the different modes of delivery in terms of education. So the one key thing that I will say that you'll see throughout this whole process of what we've been doing is really capacity building. And I love what my colleagues have said prior in terms of the tools and technologies. We didn't so much focus on the tools. We focused on the people and developing the people and building their capacity. And very early on, we spent very large amounts of effort and energy in terms of delivering professional development, bringing people from all over the world, bringing experts from different parts of the world within our experts within Sharjah, and leveraging, the really highly qualified and people that we had here to really deliver lots of professional development. And it caught on. It created a lot of excitement. We really saw great results when the MOE did the distance learning reviews of our schools. They showed that a large majority of our schools were developed in the processes in the distance learning, and that and the other ones that we had were partially developed. They were getting there. So we had excellent results from those evaluations that we had, and we're still seeing really great results within the schools. So this is something, the capacity part is caught on. His Highness has now royal decreed the building of a new academy, which is called the Sharjah Education Academy, which will have a university side of things, which we'll use to develop and train teachers and give master's degrees, postgraduate diplomas, and even PhDs. And we'll also continue in the professional development, where we're continuing to work very closely with schools, with teachers and leaderships, in building their capacity. So.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sam. I was wondering, since I'm a mom and I have a small child who I think is watching right now, how about distance learning in primary and secondary students? Because from what I've learned from almost anyone who has experience with kids or in education, the first couple of years is the most valuable years for education, and they are like, they say, like sponges. They absorb every information you give them. How was that affected, and how did you shift this education or distance learning, or blended and distance learning, in the school systems here in Sharjah?
I mean, it's excellent, and you're absolutely right. It's those primary years are absolutely critical, and it was something that was very much on our mind. By the way, Sharjah, our authority's only been here for 2 years. We're very new, and in primary education was something that we were really starting when the pandemic hit, started to focus on. And when you're looking at this transition into distance learning, it's critical. One of the first things that was really very important is the communication to parents. And this is one thing that we really is a benefit that's come out of COVID, is the increase in communication between the schools and the parents has increased, because their students are now at home, they're sitting with them. Parents are now actually attending the sessions and watching the sessions. Parents are asking questions of, what do I do? How do I engage with my students? Parents are actually learning to some degree how to teach. And so one thing that we did to really support this process was really, again, start communicating with schools and working with schools in terms of how to increase the effectiveness of the communication between the parents and between the schools, and help support that education process. So that was really critical, especially for the younger years, when they can't turn their PC on, they can't get in there and open up the Zoom. The parents have to be there. The other thing that was really important, and depending on the ages that you're working with, is really the development of new skills. I mean, so for some of the older primary students, self-learning was something that had to be taught and had to be promoted. So there's, again, the students that are a little bit older can get in there, they can turn on, you can get a 9-year-old, they can quite operate the iPad or PC or whatever they're using quite effectively. But yet the self-learning had to be a big part of it, because, parents are writing in saying, I'm the teacher now, what do I do? I can't afford to spend so much time, I'm still working. And so how do we, not remove the role, but how do we lessen the role of the parent in that process and really empower the student to become self-learners? So that was really, really important as well. And then the other piece was this really supporting the synchronous learning with the younger students, because the younger students really needed to engage with the teachers and really need to see the teachers in the other classroom and the students in the other classrooms. And so the synchronous part really in developing that with schools, especially for the younger grades, and really showing them and teaching them how to do activities that can be done through Zoom or through Microsoft Teams. And so we saw a lot of really great initiatives. We saw a lot of different schools really being very creative in how they interacted with these very young kids through these technologies and really getting the parents involved in the process. So, again, we looked at COVID as an opportunity to really increase this communication and really increase the education process.
That's amazing. Touching upon the last point, I think many parents now value, learning beyond the schools, and I have seen that so many parents have also implemented homeschooling in the States, of course, and other parts of the world, where they can study the whole year round while traveling or while learning about other cultures. And I was just thinking, how could you, or the education system can go beyond this year, and what are you going to implement for the years coming so that they can do some sort of blended learning due to, time constraints? Some families have they have to travel, or there are some personal issues going on that force the kids out of the schooling system for elongated time. So I think distant learning would help in that scenario. So I don't know, how will you go?
Well, it's a really good question. There's a lot of things that you have to consider with this. And one of the things in which, one of the positives is now you have stakeholders, all stakeholders who are open for a new change. They're recognizing that the system that we have currently with education is not resilient against the pandemic or some other activity, other things that happen. And so they're open to a different way of education, a system change. So we have schools now who are challenging their systems that are in place. And we know it's not a secret that the systems and things that we've been working with the last 100, even 200 years are difficult to implement. The research that's been done on teaching and learning in the last 40, 50, 60 years has been some wonderful research, and often in an environment that teachers teach in is very, very difficult to be able to apply those critical ways to really engage. It becomes, very time consuming to really build really engaging experiences. So COVID actually gave an opportunity to really utilize the digital technology, to really maximize the face-to-face time that students have with teachers, to really move to more project-oriented types of approach in learning. And again, to really develop a set of skills. A lot of times we focus on the content, and really the skills are critical. The ability to think, so how to think before what to think about becomes incredibly important. The digital skills become important, but also the self-learning skills, becoming a lifelong learner, so the education does continue. So really, we see a lot of these things as really opportunities and opportunities for schools to really leverage this and really build our students in a much better way, preparing them for a world which they may have to deal with something like COVID in the future. So and I'll say this last thing as well. Other thing that changed is really schools. We saw a higher interest in professional development and in capacity building. We have never seen so much excitement around wanting to learn, and it has re-energized even the need for when we come back to face-to-face and we move, we hear this, people want to move back to when things will get back to normal. People are moving away from that. People are saying, we really want to continue in the professional development and becoming better teachers and better leaders and really creating more dynamic and engaging experiences for our students.
I agree 100%. Thank you so much, Mr. Stan. And now I think we will have Dr. Mudar Khoja so that we can just control the time, and then we will have the question and answers.
Please end up your session to the question and answers. I don't have any input to that, but since we are running of time, if you have some questions to put and or to discuss with the gentlemen, let us have them, and then we will step then to the company presentation and to sum up the session. Yeah.
Of course. I will try to look through the questions. I can see some questions, but it's moving faster. So I just think I can see a question here. If we can develop a new online program that allows the development of medical examination and treatment, including joint surgeries between the United Arab Emirates and the Republic of Austria. I think maybe that would be focused on the first panel, which is more on the healthcare sector. But if one of the speakers of the first panel would like to answer that, or the second panel.
I can answer if you allow me,
Yes, please,
May. In this regard, I think we have in reality a cooperation as an example between Sharjah University and Lupik University with the medical in the medical field. Yesterday or before yesterday, there have been a graduation ceremony for PhD who finished the requirement to have a PhD degree from both universities, Lupik University in Germany and UAE Sharjah University in the United Arab Emirates. And also there is a cooperation in the field of surgical and transferring patient from both sides, but mainly from UAE to Germany. I think we can adopt that same scenario with the Austrian hospitals and universities, if there is a possibility that they will have cooperation and also showing the experience by using the artificial intelligence, by using cameras and videos in case of transferring the knowledge from one side to the other. We have also in Al-Qasimi Hospital, which is the leading hospital, governmental hospital, there is a cooperation between Italy and UAE in the cardiac centers, and there is many operations which has been conducted through Da Vinci robotic operations led by well-known Dr. Arif Nouriani, and also a student from Italy and many places also over the world learned from this experience. I think we can adopt such kind of scenario with the Austrian Center of Excellence, and we are welcoming all kind of cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abdulaziz. And I think I have witnessed that firsthand during the pandemic. I had to see a doctor and we did a virtual consultation. So thank you so much for the healthcare sector.
If I may add this to this, May, thank you very much. I have been obviously in contact with a lot of health entities here around Austria. And apparently yesterday I was in a place called Med Ostrons. This is a center for diagnostic and treatment of cancer patients. Very well known. One of 6 actually that use proton therapy. Very interesting, very advanced. My fruitful discussion with them yesterday led to the conclusion that there is willingness to cooperate on many levels with different entities within the UAE, may they be health authorities, universities, hospitals, and all medical centers there. So the Austrian side is well open to any collaboration in the future in the field of health. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. It was a great addition to the discussion. I think we are going to give the platform to Dr. Madar to present our last presenter.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mai, for your wonderful chair of the second session. Ladies and gentlemen, I would say the following. Sharjah and His Excellency Sheikh Sultan has put a lot to develop Sharjah as a center of education and science. Vienna as well has is one of the cities around the German-speaking languages with the highest number of universities. And we have a lot of investment done in the research and science. Of course, we could put more, but I think this is a very good basis of cooperation between the city of Vienna and Sharjah when it's come to scientific cooperation. This is the first. The second is the cooperation between the private sector and the research centers. It's not only the public one, but also the private one. So the healthcare research entities, institutions, whether it is the public or the private, it should become close to the business community, because the business community could provide the financial means for testing medicines, medicaments, vaccines, and so on. And the researcher, they are doing the hard job of research and innovation in that. And we have seen and heard a lot about that. Then allow me now to step to a company presentation, Apeiron Biologics. This company is one of the shareholders you have met today and you've seen today is Professor Benninger. They are doing a lot of research, and that's what we have elaborated on the ACE2 testing, and the management of all of that is in this is taken also in this company. It's an Austrian company, and I would like to ask the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Peter Llewellyn-Davies, to give his presentation. We will see what is Apeiron Biologics is doing. It is very crucial what they are doing, not only for this pandemic, but also to the possible and potential virus treatment for the future as well. So, Mr. Davies, the floor is yours, and you can put your presentation and go ahead.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. As you can see from my name and my accent, I'm based in Vienna, Austria. And
Mr. Davies, if you could speak louder, because we don't hear you that much. If it's possible to get closer to the mic.
Okay. Is this any better? Is that better?
Not really.
No? Okay.
Not really.
Apologies. Is it? I'll try a different microphone. Is this microphone better?
Yeah, please
microphone.
try to speak better? Louder, and maybe we can hear. Yeah.
Okay. Is this microphone better?
Well, it's slightly better, but it's not that much better. Now we have an interruption of your voice, sir.
Excuse me, is this microphone better?
Ja, es gibt eine Rückkopplung. If there is a back.
Okay, verstehe.
Okay,
verstehe.
now we
Is
can hear
better?
you better, sir.
Okay, sorry. I have 4 microphones because this happens sometimes. So apologies. Let's start again. Thank you for the very kind introduction. As you can see from my name and my accent, I'm based in Vienna, Austria, and look forward to presenting Apparent Biologics, which incidentally was founded also by Professor Josef Penninger, who you mentioned earlier on. So he was the founder and also the spark for this very exciting company. And Your Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen, I will start with presenting Apparent Biologics to you. So just give me a second to share the screen. I trust this is visible. And I hope we have the intonation of Arabic in here correctly. The presentation is about next generation technologies and individual therapies. And I will spend the next 5 to 10 minutes presenting Apparent Biologics.
It is perfect Arabic, Mr. Davis. I just have to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we are a successful biotech company. Why? Because we don't just develop drugs, we have already successfully brought a product to market. Our focus is on respiratory diseases, but also on cancer therapies. So you can see from this slide,
Mr. Davis, may I interrupt? Could you please switch into screen presentation at your PowerPoint presentation? Then we will see the full picture. Is it possible for you, sir?
Most certainly.
No. Bildschirmpräsentation oben, neben Animation. Ja, nein, no, we don't have any.
Give me a second. Give me a second. I have to present a different picture because usually. So is it showing now?
Now it's wonderful. Go ahead, sir.
Good. So again, I was presenting just now our different approaches here. On the one hand, we have a drug candidate to treat COVID-19. Effectively, we've created a drug based on initial research by Josef Penninger, who developed a SARS drug, and we have developed this in the meantime to treat respiratory diseases, but have also completed multiple trials and shown that this drug works to treat COVID-19, and it's also safe and tolerable as opposed to other drugs which are currently being developed. We have a very exciting cancer therapy in development. This will be a paradigm change because we use the patient's individual immune system to kill cancer. The tumor gets destructed by the patient's own immune system. It's an ambulatory setting, meaning that the patient can go into hospital as an outpatient, and it's safe and tolerable. And thirdly, we have a business model where we bring products to value, i.e. we have a product already approved, which has been commercialized in the EU to treat pediatric neuroblastoma. This is a rare disease of children below 12 years of age. And sometimes actually it's a really bad disease. Thousands of patients have already been treated with our drug, and we have revenues incoming every year. So moving to the next slide. Sorry. So I will first present the COVID-19 drug. And here I'd like to just briefly explain what is different with this drug about many of the other drugs currently in development. You can see on the left side of this slide, number 1, the challenge. The virus, the SARS-CoV-2 virus, enters the body. And the first thing it does, it looks for the keyhole to get into the cell. By doing that, it looks for a protein, it looks for a recombinant, it's called ACE2. And this enzyme, which is expressed on the cell, you can see here the light blue, is the receptor for the spike protein. It doesn't matter if it's the original SARS-CoV-2 or the variants or the mutations. By finding this ACE2, as you can see from the picture, it enters into the cell and therefore repeats. What we do, we have a replication of ACE2, a recombinant humanized ACE2, and we therefore neutralize the virus in the process of when it gets infected into the body. So therefore keeping out the virus of the body. We have the second picture, the RAS, the renin-angiotensin system, provides the balance between organ infections and organ failure. So what APN-01 does, it shifts the RAS towards the repair and the potential organ protection by suppressing so-called ANG2. And the third area which we know about is the inflammation, not just of the respiratory disease here, but also other parts of the body. So APN-01 influences this RAS here and therefore makes sure that this pro-inflammatory and vascular-constructive ANG2 increases the anti-inflammatory levels. So through this, we can say that the drug works on 3 definite modes of action. So we've shown recent trials, we've shown definite benefits. As you've probably heard from Joseph Penninger, COVID-19 isn't just a respiratory disease. It affects many organs, whether it be the neurological, the brain, heart and blood vessels, and the skin, kidneys, and other organs as well. We've shown in our trials that we can reduce the days without mechanical ventilation. We've shown that we have the viral load reduced, and we've shown that the lung is protected and the other organs as well, meaning that because it is safe and well tolerable, we believe it is the best drug available when we get it approved to treat COVID-19, and it protects against all mutations, all variants, as was previously described. So we've completed, as I mentioned, a phase 2 trial in Europe and in Russia. We've treated just under 200 patients, and we've shown the drug to be well tolerated. We've reduced the amount of days the patient was in hospital, and also we've reduced the viral load. And now we're very proud to have been invited by the US government and the Vanderbilt University Medical Center to take part in a trial, which we are the only non-European company taking part. The only non-US company taking part, and various patients will be treated in the US, and this will take from now until the beginning of next year to complete. We're already starting an inhalation phase 1 trial where we will treat early stage patients, healthy adults, to see how COVID-19 will be prevented from entering the body by using the virus neutralization technology. And also the third point, the UK Recovery Plus program, which is a platform trial, and there we'll be treating outpatients for COVID-19, and the application for this trial is ongoing. So COVID-19 is just one part of our business, and excuse me, I have 2 screens here, so I have to move forward to change the pages. The next part of our company is cancer therapy, and here we believe we have delivered and chosen a next generation checkpoint inhibition. And what does this mean? As you can imagine, every person has tumor cells in the body. Usually our immune system destroys the tumor cells very effectively, and therefore the disease does not spread in the body. However, those patients who are susceptible to larger tumors and metastases, they usually have a misfunction of the immune system. And we've realized through original research by Professor Penninger that the CBL-B, which is a checkpoint inhibitor, effectively programs the cells to either kill tumors or not kill tumors. So if you silence this checkpoint inhibitor and tell it what to do, then effectively we have a brand new type of cancer treatment, which effectively is very innovative. And how does this work? From the one start, what we do is a transient modification of the individual cell. And you might have heard of CAR-Ts. CAR-Ts are the current cell therapy, which are selling for $400,000 plus per treatment. And our product works differently because we don't just go into blood tumors, which CAR-Ts do, but we can also go into solid tumors. We have a broader effect of treating patients through the immune activation, not just of one particular cell, but of various types of cells to kill off the tumor. Easier, cheaper manufacturing. It's a closed GMP certified system in a box next to the bed of the patients. And we've shown safety and tolerability, whereas the other drugs which are being developed have shown severe toxicities. And how does this work? The patient goes into the hospital, cancer patient or is already in the hospital, it undergoes a leukapheresis, and basically what happens then is that the blood is taken from the patient. This is a process that takes about 4 hours, and then we separate the white blood cells from the red blood cells. We use the white blood cells, and therefore in this process affect it with the immune cell, and therefore influence the master checkpoint in this particular cell, and then bring it back to the body of the patient, and all within 8 hours. So an ambulatory treatment, the patient can go and have a cup of coffee or go and watch a film or whatever wants to do. And therefore this treatment is repeated every 3 weeks because, as I mentioned, it's transient, meaning it is not a long-term effect, but with a short term gives a booster to the immune system and therefore able to kill the cancer cells. We've shown that it works in a phase 1 trial. We've shown that it is very promising developments because of the 28 patients treated, almost 30% shown steady disease stabilization in very difficult cancers like pancreatic and other cancers which usually have no treatment. So from our point of view, we're currently undergoing a fundraising. We feel that now is an excellent time to invest. Why? Because we have an extremely motivated team. We're only about 30 people here in Vienna. And what we've done with this small team, set up a clinical trial for COVID-19. We've set up a clinical trial for cancer. And this is all done in-house with external support. So we're very proud of our team. We're very committed, and we have a global strategy, not just localized in Vienna. We generate revenues, very unusual for a biotech company, due to the sales of our pediatric neuroblastoma drug. And we have very innovative projects with cutting innovation here, in particular, the COVID-19 drug candidate, ACE2, but also the autologous cell therapy, which is currently undergoing another study here. So behind that, we also have other projects which I didn't present today, which are early stage, and therefore they will fuel the growth and the pipeline of the future. And we have a clear plan with major inflection points ahead. Thank you very much. That summarizes my presentation, and I look forward to answering any questions, or as you can see from this slide, please contact me separately if you wish to have further information about the Pyron Biologics. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis, also for the time reduction for your presentation. We are very interested to get the presentation. Also, if you could spread it to us to enable to spread it to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, now I think we are ready to hear and to see the video by the Health Authority of Sharjah. I think we have prepared for you the video that was to be shown through the talk and speech of His Excellency Dr. Abdulaziz. Sharjah, can you show please the film now?
Sharjah Healthcare City is designed to ensure a smooth and hassle-free single window business setup for you. We are dedicated to become a one-stop shop for all healthcare needs that eventually benefit not just you, but the community at large.
Ladies and gentlemen, you see, it was worth it to wait to see this video, wonderful presentation by the Healthcare Authority of Sharjah. Ladies and gentlemen, there is an Austrian word saying, mit Reden kommt man zusammen. It means with talks, people come together. And this is what we were trying to bring the people together and share the minds and share the ideas and also share possibilities of partnership. I've seen that there is a question to the session, to the second session concerning the technology and digitalization, but it wasn't covered. Let us try to have those questions answered afterward. Please place those questions to either to our colleagues in the Sharjah Chamber of Commerce or to us, and we will try to arrange for adequate answers. I would like to say it's not the end of the talk. I think this is the beginning of the talk, because there are a lot of topics, lot of follow-up talks we can have together with Sharjah, with the United Arab Emirates, together with Austria, Vienna. And I have to say the following: many thanks to all of you, to all speakers, to His Excellency Ambassador Al-Musharraf, but mainly, of course, to His Excellency Abdullah Sultan Al-Awais and his team, Fatima, May, Abdullah, whoever worked and was very engaged in the last month preparing this session, but also to my team, Chief of Staff, Mrs. Layla Kaplan, Zahra, Firas, and Aya. All of them were very much engaged preparing the content, organizing the whole. I would like to see that we will have a follow-up also in this year, together with your esteemed chamber, Excellency Abdullah Al-Awais, and we are very much interested to strengthen the cooperation and hope to see all of you in Vienna. And I will promise that I would love to jump to UAE, not only to Dubai, but also to Sharjah to meet our friend there and partners. All the best. Thank you very much for this wonderful session. Thank you all speakers for the wonderful presentation and discussion. All the best. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.